The town of Quahog lay wrapped in a thick white blanket, courtesy of the blizzard that had hit with the subtlety of a freight train the night before. The whole neighborhood was out relishing the frosty wonderland, pelting each other with snowballs, building lopsided snowmen, and, in one case, trying to ski down an icy driveway with disastrous results. In the middle of all this wintry chaos, Chris was dutifully shoveling snow off an old lady's driveway, trading his aching back for a few extra bucks to keep his snack stash full. Meanwhile, Brian, ever the devious canine, convinced Stewie to taste the lemon snow he had spotted near a fire hydrant. "It's nature's sorbet," he proclaimed with utmost sincerity. Brian laughed so hard he nearly fell over, earning himself a lifetime of bitter glances from Stewie. "That wasn't lemon, was it?" Stewie growled, wiping his tongue on his sleeve with all the disgust his little face could muster. Adding to Stewie's misery, it was the day he had to visit his grandparents. A visit he loathed more than any forced attempt at family bonding. On the way to their house, Grandpa, who had insisted on driving despite everyone's objections, nodded off behind the wheel, sending the car hurtling straight into a tree. Grandpa came out with a bruised ego and a small bump on his head, while Stewie's complaints filled the air. At the hospital, Joe arrived with the grim news that Grandpa's driver's license would be permanently revoked due to his advanced age and sudden narcoleptic tendencies. Grandpa, of course, was furious. "I still have plenty left to do. I'm the CEO of a $6 billion company," he bellowed, shaking his fist. Grandma tried to calm him down, suggesting that maybe it was time to slow down and enjoy life. "We could travel, take long walks, even play shuffleboard," she said hopefully. After a long argument and a plate of hospital jello, Grandpa grudgingly agreed to retire, albeit with reluctance and a side of complaints. With his newfound freedom, Grandpa decided to spend time with Peter, Quagmire, and Joe at the bar. As Grandpa joined their evening escapades, Peter found himself increasingly uncomfortable with Grandpa's constant, unsolicited life advice. "You're a grown man, Peter. Invest in real estate, diversify your portfolio," Grandpa announced one night, as Peter downed his beer and tried to pretend he hadn't heard. Then, Lois announced that Grandpa was excited to spend more time with the family. The kids groaned in unison. Spending time with Grandpa meant endless stories about the good old days, and being ordered around like mini employees. In an attempt to appease him, they suggested outings to the zoo, the beach, and even the mall, but he shot each idea down, calling them childish. Finally, he turned his attention to Quagmire. "You're the cool one around here, right?" Grandpa asked, clearly misinformed. Peter couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy as Grandpa began hanging out with Quagmire, whose cool antics were really just thinly veiled disaster. Peter and Lois finally hatched a plan to encourage Grandpa to consider joining a retirement community. They painted a picture of life in Florida as one endless vacation with people his own age. "Think of the bingo nights, the early bird specials," Peter coaxed. After some hemming and hawing, Grandpa agreed, and soon enough, he and Grandma were on their way to sunny Florida. Once there, they toured the Oceanside retirement home, which boasted all the amenities: shuffleboard, movie nights, and a golf course. But all Grandpa could see were a bunch of folks he deemed one step away from the great beyond, shuffling around in orthopedic shoes. He balked at the thought of living such a life, but Peter insisted he try it out, going as far as to join him for a day of retired life activities. They played bingo, Grandpa lost and was indignant, and Peter helped him shop for retirement-ready clothes. Finally, Grandma and Grandpa settled in, and Quahog seemed to regain a bit of peace. 6 months later, Lois received an urgent call from her mother, claiming something was terribly wrong with Grandpa. When Lois arrived, she barely recognized the man before her, hunched over, staring vacantly into space, mumbling to himself. He hadn't bathed in days and seemed utterly lost. "He sleeps 18 hours a day and won't get out of that chair," her mother sighed. Peter, seeing his once fiery father-in-law reduced to this shell, decided enough was enough. "You took away the one thing he loved, his work," he declared. Determined to get Grandpa back on track, he convinced him to resume his role at the company, where he could boss people around to his heart's content. It was like lighting a fire under him. Everyone was thrilled to see him back to his old self. Soon, Grandpa was back in business, barking orders and working his employees half to death. Ironically, as Grandpa settled back into the hustle, Peter secretly hoped his own mother would stay nice and cozy in her retirement home. The last thing he needed was another elderly relative taking over his life. With a grin, he looked at Lois and said, "One old man running the show is enough for any family, don't you think?"